Welcome to Voodoo Whiskey Gaming, and I haven't done one of these in a while, but this is just a quick opinion piece, and it's just something I kind of want to put out there. So I'll just start with saying, 7 years, $250 million. $250 million. That is me describing Star Citizen. Star Citizen is a crowdfunded game that doesn't really exist, and it just keeps promising shit, and quite frankly, it'll be amazing if it ever does actually come out. But it does shine a great light on something that I've always noticed in the industry, and I think it's something we as gamers need to accept and address. Maybe not address, but acknowledge. There needs to be a balance between the creatives and the corporate folk. Because when there isn't a balance between those things, you wind up with the shit that Ubisoft, EA, and Activision are doing. Or on the other side of that, you wind up with something like Star Citizen. EA and their fucking obsession with loot boxes has trashed great games. Their obsession with these ideas as games as a service, loot boxes, blah blah blah, this way to extend games, has led to them wasting great licenses like the Star Wars franchise. They've had it for years upon years, and they've only actually made 2 games out of it. And one of those was a fucking disaster. Then you've got Activision with what they've been doing with Call of Duty and the loot boxes there, people getting pissed off over it, which I don't entirely blame them. Them trying to introduce like pay-to-win mechanics in the multiplayer, which again, if you play hardcore mode, doesn't really affect that generally. But if you can just cough up $50, buy a bunch of loot boxes, get a way better gun, and go into normal mode and kick ass because of that, that's some bullshit. Nobody's gonna really argue with that. Except for the corporate people, because that's just more money in their pockets. Then you've got Ubisoft taking a game like Ghost Recon, which Wildlands wasn't exactly a one-off. They had the season pass, which was extra money. They had some DLCs and shit, which was extra money. But then you take Breakpoint, which is 100% meant to be a games as a service, keep it going, keep money flowing in, pay for loot, pay for better guns, etc. That kind of bullshit. But it's kind of better to go back to EA because they have had multiple Star Wars games in production from companies that people would gladly pay $60 to play that game. And we're talking millions and millions of people who would pay that money to play those games, but because it didn't have a games as a service model, they can't. So that's my example of corporate getting in the way and fucking around in a way that's not okay. But then you have Star Citizen on the other hand, and the reason this all came up was because it's been 7 years since Star Citizen started its crowdfunding and started its development. And like I said, $250 million from backers and from actual, investors. And the game is nowhere near release because it has no corporation behind it. It's one of those things where the corporate actually comes in handy because they can control the artistic individuals. But when you have just the purely artistic individuals just going and going and going, you end up with bullshit like Peter Molyneux running his mouth and nothing coming of it. Or you have something like Star Citizen where this game will probably never really exist because they keep coming up with new ideas and they keep trying to implement these new ideas, and it's just never going to be what they want it to be in their mind, so they'll never release it because in their mind, it's not perfect yet, it's not ready. What you need is somewhere in between, somewhere to walk that line, and the best example that comes to my mind would be Square Enix with Kingdom Hearts 3 and Final Fantasy 15. Both of those games were in development for exceptionally long periods of time, but there was a reason for that. It was because the director was doing the director artistic thing where nothing was perfect. We did finally get those games though because there was a level of corporate behind them that was like, no, we need to get this moving. They started moving personnel around so that they could actually push the product out. They made sure the product was good. They understood that it was never going to be perfect, and if they ever wanted to get a product out the door, they were gonna have to step in and make that happen. And while there's definitely some little bits of bullshit in there, it's not like what EA, Activision, and those guys are doing. So in my mind, I'm just kind of putting this out there because I feel like we as gamers need to stop with the rage tactics and start with the thinking tactics and encourage companies like EA, Activision, Ubisoft to get some perspective and understand that they need to balance these two things. Because however much money they were sinking into those 2 Star Wars games that never came, well, that money's just completely lost now. But then you have the same thing going on with Star Citizen with hundreds of millions of dollars that may never come to fruition. There needs to be that balance, and we as gamers need to put that out there in the universe. Okay, so in the comments below, why don't you tell me your opinion on this matter? And as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. And if you like what I'm doing in general, share and subscribe. Have a good one.